Hello class. In last lesson, we have created this barrier model, and we created a material and the different type of texture for it. So whenever you move your project to a different computer and when you open it, you will see the texture is not showing up on your model, and even if you press 6K to display the texture, it doesn't show up. So anytime this happens, you'll just have to go to top menu File and Set Project, okay, and select the project folder, which is, see here, this folder we have created last time, right? And we have a texture and scene in this folder. So you'll just have to select the root folder and set, and then refresh your scene by just go to the scenes folder and double click on your Maya file to reopen it, and press number 6, the 6 key on your keyboard, and the texture should show up. Okay. One issue, if I turn off the light, and for the model we have created, the texture we have created, and for the back side, you will see the textures get a little bit distorted, on the seam. Here's the seam for the UV, the border. So the reason why we have this issue is, if I go to Photoshop, as you can see, this is the UV, right? And since we unfolded the barrier for this piece, this whole piece is totally unfolded. However, when we have the texture like this, it has this straight line. If we apply, put it on the UV itself, right, the texture, it will get distorted. So here it'll bend in this way, and here it'll bend in that way. Okay, so there are two ways to fix this issue. So I'll show you the first way. It's easier, it's much easier, and it is based on what we have learned so far, and then I'll show you the second way. Okay, so for the first way, so I'll go to a face selection mode, double click on this whole piece and hold on shift and double click on here. So I select all the faces on this side. Okay, and then I will go to the UV and apply a cylindrical mapping. Okay, and then we can either use this slider to cover the whole thing, or we can just go to a channel box and make sure the projection sweep, it covered 360 degrees, so it covered the whole thing. And here's the UV. So right now, as you can see, it is just a square shape, and we can manually scale it down a little bit. So here's the center row here. Okay, so you can use that as a reference and scale down a little bit and compare the proportion of the width and the height of the edge, and get the rough proportion. Okay, it matches. All right, so we'll keep the UV like this, and the top faces, since it's smaller here, should be bigger. Now they have the equal size, the same size. So when you apply texture, it will have a little distortion. However, you will not be able to see. It will not be very obvious on your model. So let's take a look at how it will look. All right. So here I will place it inside of this frame, and I'll give it a new material. So I'll select this whole thing, and I'll create a new material, a number material, and I will give it a name. And for its color channel, I'll load a file, and I'll give this image as a texture. As you can see, for this image, every part of the image is a straight line, right? The texture on the wood. So if I apply, and then I select the object and apply the material to it, now you can see it actually, let me move this window out, it actually works well, right? You cannot tell any of the distortion, even though here is more narrowed and here's more kind of a wider, but the whole thing looks good. Okay, so that is the easy fix. Even though on the top and the bottom it have a little distortion on the texture, because it is squished down the texture. However, the whole thing looks good, looks better. And then I will reopen this file, and I'll show you the second way to fix that. For the second way, I'll use another program called Modbox. Here is it. So I select this piece, go to File and Export Selection. So here I'll export as a OPG file format, and I'll export it as a I'll say burial and export, and then go to model box, and I'll just drag this burial OPG file in here. So here you can go to Stencil and then click on this arrow and add stencil. So for add stencil, you can add the this wood texture image. So add it, so it'll be imported as a texture that you can use for your model. And then what I can do is I can select this texture image, and as you can see that here, I can go to a pen tool and use a brush tool as the paint. And for color, make sure you choose white. All right, and then you can just simply paint on your model, and as you paint, you can see that it will create a new paint layer. So that will be your texture. You will be able to export the texture. Okay, click on OK, and see here, my window is a little bit too small since I have to record a video. However, you will be able to see the layers. So here, if you check the layers, you can switch to sculpt and paint. So at the paint, here's the layer we have created. All right, and then I can just paint on the model. And then if you try projection, it'll be another thing. See, now the texture will be colorful. That will be your original texture. And then you can just paint. And then you can rotate. So the key for rotation and zoom in and zoom out is the same as a Maya. Okay, so you can orient to a different point of view, and you can paint. Once you've done, you can just hit QK to quit the tool. You can see that the texture will be painted on your model. So the benefit of this method is you can paint whatever you want on your model, and you can even add one more layer. And on the second layer, you can paint other texture. For example, if you want some brick to add into the barrel surface, and here we go. And if you want to write some text on it, you can just create a new layer and use a brush tool, and then, for example, if I make my brush smaller and I don't know why I write Diffuse is a program's name. So basically, you can do whatever you want on the model, and then when you're done with it, you can just select this folder, Diffuse map folder, and you can just right click, and then you can export channel merged. So it'll export to your local folder as an image. Okay, so I'll just export it to maybe source image folder, and here I'll put it a name, burial texture, maybe painted texture. Okay, and this is the texture we have painted and exported, and is a PNG format. So now you can see that this is the texture we have painted, right? And now you can see that the texture itself has been distorted. However, when I apply this texture onto the model, it should be fine. Drop in this texture file. Here is it. Okay, place it on the top of it, and we only want this part, right? So what you can do is you can go to, here we go, select this part and deselect the area that we don't want. Okay, and then make sure you select the right layer, and then rasterize the layer and hit delete. Oops, sorry, I should invert the selection and hit delete. So this will delete everything outside of this area. So this is what we have. This is what we have before, and this is what we have painted. If I select this whole thing and make a duplication, so I can compare the differences, and I'll create a new number material, burial 2, and for the channel, the color, and I'll load the new image I have created. Alright, so I'll apply it to the second one. So now let's compare the differences. Right? So now you can see that the texture, the wireframe of the wood, it works well, right? And here I forgot to turn off the UV references, but you can see how the texture of the wood match with the barrel, the wireframe. Okay, so that's two ways to fix this common issue. The first way would be the easiest, very fast, very simple. You know, and you will have some little distortion on the top and the bottom, but it is fine, you know, for this specific model, you know, very basic shapes. And the second method is more complex, and I don't think it's very necessary to do it on this type of model. However, if you have a very complex model, for example, creature, human character, for those type of models, and I will use this method to manually paint the texture onto the surface of the model instead of, you know, just make the texture to a square.